The air hung heavy, thick with the scent of citrus and the promise of a new day. Sunrise painted the Florida sky in hues of orange and gold. On a rural highway, a van packed with farm workers rumbled towards the fields. Their laughter, their dreams, their hopes for a better life, all were shattered in an instant. A speeding pickup truck, driven by a man with a history of reckless driving, slammed into them. Metal crumpled, glass exploded, and lives were extinguished. The tranquility of the morning was replaced by the piercing wail of sirens and the anguished cries of the injured. The impact was devastating. The van, carrying more than a dozen workers, was reduced to a mangled wreck. Bodies were strewn across the asphalt. First responders worked tirelessly, their faces grim, their movements urgent, as they tried to extract survivors from the wreckage. The scene was a chaotic tableau of blood and twisted metal, a chilling testament to the fragility of life. The driver of the pickup, Bryan Maclean Howard, emerged from his vehicle relatively unscathed. He stood by the roadside, his face pale, his eyes betraying a mixture of shock and fear. But as the initial shock subsided, a chilling realization dawned on the witnesses and investigators. This was not Howard's first brush with disaster. His past was littered with a string of accidents, a trail of recklessness that had finally culminated in this horrific tragedy. Bryan Maclean Howard, the man behind the wheel of the pickup truck, was no stranger to traffic violations. His driving record was a litany of offenses: speeding tickets, reckless driving charges, and even a DUI. He had been involved in multiple accidents in the past, leaving a trail of damaged vehicles and injured victims in his wake. Each incident seemed to have done little to deter his reckless behavior. He continued to drive with a blatant disregard for the safety of others, as if the rules of the road did not apply to him. The authorities had tried to rein him in, suspending his license on multiple occasions. But Howard, it seemed, was undeterred. He continued to drive, his actions fueled by a sense of impunity, a belief that he was somehow above the law. His history painted a clear picture of a man who posed a serious threat to public safety. Yet despite the numerous warning signs, he was allowed to remain behind the wheel, free to continue his reckless ways. The families of the farm workers, their lives shattered by this preventable tragedy, struggled to comprehend how this man, with such a blatant disregard for the law, was allowed to continue driving. They demanded answers, they demanded justice. They wanted to know why the system, designed to protect them, had failed so miserably. Their grief was compounded by a searing anger, a burning rage against the man who had taken their loved ones and against the institutions that had allowed him to do so. The victims of the crash were more than just names on a police report. They were fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters. They were the backbone of their families, the breadwinners who toiled under the scorching Florida sun to provide for their loved ones. They were the dreamers who had journeyed far from home, seeking a better life, a chance to escape poverty and build a brighter future. Their dreams, their aspirations, their very existence was brutally extinguished in a senseless act of recklessness. Maria, a young mother of 3, had left her children in the care of her elderly mother back in Mexico. She yearned to provide them with a better life, to shield them from the hardships she had endured. Every dollar she earned was a testament to her love, a sacrifice she willingly made for their future. Juan, a hardworking father, dreamt of saving enough money to buy a small plot of land, a place where his family could thrive, a sanctuary away from the uncertainties of life as a migrant worker. Their stories, their dreams, their sacrifices, all were tragically cut short. The families they left behind were left to grapple with the unbearable pain of their loss. The weight of their grief was immense, a crushing burden that threatened to consume them. They were left with nothing but memories, fading photographs, and the agonizing question, why? The tragic crash in Florida, though shocking in its scale and brutality, was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a much larger problem, a systemic failure that allowed reckless drivers to remain on the roads, endangering the lives of innocent people. The system, designed to protect the public, was riddled with loopholes, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and a lack of accountability. Drivers with a history of dangerous behavior often slipped through the cracks, their offenses minimized, their licenses reinstated, allowing them to continue their reckless ways. The lack of adequate public transportation in rural areas further exacerbated the problem. Farm workers, often living far from their places of work, were forced to rely on overcrowded vans and unsafe vehicles for their daily commute. Their safety was often compromised, their lives put at risk, due to the lack of viable alternatives. The system, in its current state, was failing to protect the most vulnerable members of society. The crash in Florida served as a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the human cost of these systemic failures. It highlighted the urgent need for reforms, for stricter laws, for enhanced enforcement, and for a renewed commitment to ensuring the safety of all road users. The time for complacency was over. The time for action was now. The tragic crash in Florida should serve as a catalyst for change, a turning point in our approach to road safety. We must demand accountability from our lawmakers, our judicial system, and our law enforcement agencies. We must push for stricter laws, for enhanced enforcement, and for a zero-tolerance policy towards reckless driving. The lives of innocent people are at stake, and we cannot afford to be complacent. We must also address the systemic issues that contribute to the vulnerability of farm workers. We need to invest in safe and reliable public transportation options in rural areas, providing workers with a viable alternative to unsafe vehicles and overcrowded vans. We need to ensure that their workplaces are safe, that their rights are protected, and that their lives are valued. The road ahead is long and challenging, but we must not allow this tragedy to fade from our collective memory. We must honor the memory of those who were lost by working tirelessly to prevent such tragedies from happening again. We must strive to create a world where every journey is safe, where every life is valued, and where the roads we share are no longer paved with the shattered dreams of innocent victims.